Hey guys, so I was asked recently, why haven't I done any rant videos? So I decided to do one. I had played in this game recently, and it had some really interesting aspects to it. I had never dealt with some of the shit that I had dealt with in this game before. The um, the GM had this really really structured way that he played the game, and as far as like setting up his game and what he had put into it and everything. But as far as running the game, he didn't put any effort into controlling the players. And this is a problem I see with GMs a lot, is that their inability to take control over their game, and then the players end up running the game instead of the GM running the game. But in this instance, the GM was having a lot of problems. Well, and so I was playing in this game, and the first thing I noticed was, unlike a lot of other games that I've ever played in, nothing was happening. Like we played for 4 or 5 hours, and maybe somewhere in the breadth of 5 and 10 rounds of combat would take place, and heavy, combat related mission. And it took me a while to realize what was happening, and that these things would happen. I started even counting. I'm like, holy shit, this was like only. I remember one time looking, I was like, this was only like nine rounds of combat took place this entire game, and that from the beginning to the end, we were still in combat from the last time we had played. Um, and I'm like, holy shit, this is taking forever. And one of the things that I noticed in the game was one of the players was exceedingly argumentative. He would argue with the GM about everything, and apparently he and the GM had this working relationship where they had came up with some rules that, in the event that there was something that occurred in the game and they didn't agree on it, they would look up the ruling, and they would come to an official ruling, and then they would, figure it out what it is and then continue mission. You know, so, but the crazy thing is that there would be a lot of gray lines. I mean, Pathfinder's not perfect, and these guys would just argue it out and argue it out and argue it out, and the the player would just be a total dick. And then we had another player, and this player had a lot of creatures that was summoned, and he never seemed like he knew what the fuck he was doing, and would just bog down the game. So I'm here playing the game. It comes around to my turn. It takes me 20 seconds to sit there and to go through my turn, and then I would watch the clock. After this was happening, because I played in this game for several sessions. I really liked the GM, and I realized like an entire hour would take place between my turn and the next turn, next to my turn, and there were 3 players playing this game. Other than myself, sometimes it was just me and 2 other players, but usually me and 3 other players. So somehow between my turn, that takes roughly 30 seconds, and going all the way through the other 3 players and the GM getting back to me, an hour would transpire. And so I started looking at things, because at first, I didn't really pay that much of attention to it. I just noticed that it was taking forever, and I started, one of the players I was looking at, he would take a really long time, and so I started timing him, and I had timed him out, and one of the turns having taken just under 31 minutes for his turn, and the other male player, he would take 15 minutes, 15-20 minutes on his turn. Well, it took me a while to realize what the fuck was going on with this the one player, And so I started paying really close attention to what he was doing. And most players, they'll sit there and see that they've got a motive, they've got an objective. And so they'll sit there and tell the GM, they're like, okay, what I'd like to do is I'm trying to do this. Um, is it possible, given the dimensions of this, that I'd be able to bypass this? And then you're suddenly working together as a team to try and see if he can overcome this handicap. But that's not what he would do. What he would do instead is he started asking all these nonsensical questions, like he was trying to get one by on the GM. He didn't want it. I got the feeling that he didn't want the GM to know what he was doing until he was going to do it, and it really fucked with the game, because what would happen is he would start asking nonsensical questions about the dimensions of this and the dimensions of that and this, and so he'd ask a whole bunch of questions, and then sometimes he would answer his own question. Well, that's not going to work. And then he would try something else. He would do the same type of bullshit. But one of the killers is that before he even got to his turn, he would not conceptualize what he was going to do before he got to his turn. Like, as gamers, you should be already thinking about what you're going to do next. Before it ever gets to your turn. By the time it hits your turn, 9 times out of 10, you should already know what you're going to do, because you've already been thinking about it. You've been watching the battle play out, and you're like, okay, all right, this is what I'm going to do. And that's not what he was doing, because in his mind, the battle could change. And so what he was doing instead is he was waiting till his turn, then he would think about it. Well, I thought it was really strange when I'm playing this game and everything, because one of the other things is these guys wouldn't talk at all. I mean, 15 minutes of silence would go by, and I would have to check my mic, because I would be thinking that my headphone, like maybe I got booted out of what was the Discord. Maybe I got booted out of Discord, and I didn't. There was a conversation that was taking place, and I wasn't aware of it. Because nobody was talking, and so somebody would sometimes respond when I'd ask for a response and everything. But what was really happening is that I realized afterwards is these motherfuckers were going AFK. So they would take their turn, go AFK, wait till about it was time for them to go back to their turn, jump into the game, and then try to decide what they were going to do. So, in looking at player one, one of the other things that he would do is he would argue out everything with the GM. And so when the GM tried to stop some of his shenanigans, he would argue it out, then he'd try something else, and then he would argue it out, and then he'd try something else, and he would argue it out, Then, and this was the kicker, because most of his turns actually only ran about 15 minutes at the most. He would then, after his turn was completed, after his actions was done, in an effort to get the last word, he would continue to argue with the GM for another 15 fucking minutes on somebody else's dime. And this is how this motherfucker would tally up a 30-minute fucking turn. And so that would happen, and the other player, this player had was really kind of funky. And see, what happened is this player had a loyalty feat with this character, and the player was not familiar with Roll20, although he had been playing in it for a year and a half. The other players said that he had mental issues that made it difficult for him to navigate the game. And when I talked to the GM, I said, well, what's wrong with the young man? And he said, oh, he's dyslexic, and he has, some problems with math. I was like, okay. And he's like, and he's got, some emotional issues. No mental retardation, no Asperger's, no nothing. This kid was dyslexic. Maybe not the sharpest tool in the shed. He seemed like a straight guy to me. When I had conversations with him, he seemed like he was all right. Like I had a soldier who had Asperger's, and You could definitely tell there was something wrong with him from the get-go. And see, I'm one of those people that I think you can, and I'm not one of those people that I like to handhold people through shit. I believe in people. I believe in their capabilities. I believe that people have difficulties to overcome. Um, but I mean, shit, right here. That's from Afghanistan. My ulnar nerve is not completely attached, and I have wasting in my left hand, where my muscles are constantly atrophying. I have to constantly stay in the gym to keep everything balanced so I can actually have strength. It's a hurdle. I have pain every day in my left hand for the rest of my life. It's only going to get worse. It's life. I deal with it. It's a hurdle. I overcome it. So I don't believe in you know, if you can overcome something, I'm not saying like, okay, well, I want you to fly and you ain't got no fucking wings. I don't want you to run and you ain't got no fucking legs. But, if it's difficult, but it can be done. It can be done. You know, well, what was going on with this gentleman is he had played in this game for a year and a half. And the way that the GM had explained it to me was that he had, well, let me roll back for a second. The gentleman took the feat loyalty, and that afforded him to have have an NPC. The NPC was a druid. The druid had a companion. The druid could also summon Nature's Ally, which he did vehemently, and had wild shape. So the druid had all these moving working pieces. And in Roll20, this is this is really probably as difficult as you get when it comes to characters. However, it just requires that you come into the game and you actually do the work. It's not so much as difficult as in it's hard to do as it once you've got kind of the gist of what's going on. It's difficult in the sense that it requires a little bit of work. However, having never used Roll20 before and just familiarized myself with it over a course of 2 months, as opposed to the year and a half or 2 years that these guys were playing the game, I made a high-level druid, from start to finish with all the fixings in an hour and a half. And so it can be done and not that difficult. If you make a normal character takes about 30 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on what you get. So he made this character, and everybody would make this excuse for the guy that he's got these issues, and so he needs help, and he's special needs and stuff. He's dyslexic. Okay, he has difficulty reading. I would go so far as saying twice as hard as the man next to him to be able to read. But I would not say that the guy is impotent. Now, the way that the situation was described to me, coming from the actual GM, is the GM said, "Hey, look," and I will be here on Roll20. Come over here, and I will help you do this at any time. Now, the GM was always there present in Roll20 because I used to jump into Roll20 all the time and see him. So he was always there working on his game. He was always present. He made his own schedule, so he was always available. It was never an issue of not having someone available. 5 other players offered to help him. In fact, a lot of these other players would roll into his character and actually do his character for him. This character would level up, and he would take forever to level up his character. He'd wait till the next game session to do it. He never wanted to do shit on his free time, and everybody kept saying, he's got, disability. His disability was he's fucking lazy, and I call it how I see it. I sat there and listened to the GM. He described the situation to me. He called him fucking lazy. I'm calling him fucking lazy. I watched the guy level up one level. We all leveled one of these games. It was one of those games where everybody magically fucking leveled. And between that game session and the following game session, he didn't level his character. He came into the game, and it's like, oh, I haven't had a chance to get around to it. I'm going to start working on it now. Didn't get through it then. Came to the next game session. Oh, I haven't got around to it and everything. I'm gonna get to it now. This is leveling your character. He didn't want to fucking level his character, much less do the additional shit that was needed for his character. And we had spoken to him. Well, he had spoken to him. I had told him, I said, you know, look, man, if you're having difficulties with summoning all these fucking creatures, maybe you shouldn't summon them all. But my character's a summoner class. I'm like, look, man, you're not the only fucking player here. I don't want to sit here for 15 minutes while you fucking play this game and try and figure out what the fuck you're doing. And see, what would happen is that what should have happened is that he should have had all these little monsters lined down in his tab. So he's like, oh, I'm gonna summon this, or I'm gonna turn into this, or you know, or this, that, and this and that. And he'd have all these little hotkeys and fucking drag and drop, and you know, just you know, and be able to do whatever the fuck he wants with the fucking character. But he didn't want to do that. So what ended up having to happen is the GM would then have to go find the NPC, then take the NPC and drag him over into the fucking thing. So when the player wanted to summon monster summoning one, or I'm sorry, nature's ally or whatever, instead of the player moving him over and dropping him, the GM would have to look him up and do that, which would slow down the game even more. You know, and then on top of that, he wouldn't do this with his he being able to turn into a fire elemental or any of this other shit and everything. So nothing was able to be drug and dropped into the game. And you know, and one of the things is he was one of those guys that was notorious for walking away from his computer. He'd walk away from his computer, come back, and be like, I have no idea what's going on. And once again, you know, like nobody would like even help him, you know. And then he would try and speak in over on some other people's turns, and just to be honest with you, I mean, to call it what it is. This is the worst gaming group I've ever seen. I mean, I've had dudes sit there and cuss me out and say racial slurs at me like there was no tomorrow, and they were not near as bad as this game here. I had someone tell me that Pathfinder is being destroyed by role players, which I then proceeded to tell him that Pathfinder is a role-playing game, a game for role players. Dumbass. Nothing wrong with playing this game as a hack and slasher, but you know, you have to understand that that's a way that you're playing the game. You know, it's a choice. Saying people that don't play by the same rules that you play by as wrong is just a douchebag move. But he was not near as fucking annoying as this group. So the one guy I tried I am capable of using etiquette and being able to speak to someone in such a way that I don't come off as a complete and utter fucking asshole. And I did, because my goal in this was to help the group move forward. And I don't think that this was so much as, you know, when I was looking at it, I didn't think this was so much as a difference of opinion and play style. I thought that this was a difference of, you know, players just fucking up. You know, you're not finishing out your character sheet so that you can play the game, and so you're bogging down the game, and you're walking away from the game, and you're not fucking paying attention to what's going on. And so when you come back, you know, you don't know what's going on, and we're fucking having to wait on you, and it's taking for fucking ever. And the other guy fucking constantly arguing with the goddamn GM, walking away from his game, waiting to the last minute to decide what he's going to fucking do, and then every chance he gets, he's trying to fuck over the GM on the way that he's fucking trying to do something, because he's trying to fucking sneak one by on the GM every chance he gets. This didn't seem like a difference of, you know, my belief system versus your belief system. It was, you guys are fucking shitty players and you're acting like assholes. So I felt free to fucking say, hey guys, you know, I think as a group conscious, I think that it would be in the best interest of the group if we together, you know, stop doing this. And there was these finger pointings. It's like, I don't do that. He does that. I don't do this and everything. I'm like, I'm not trying to do pointing fingers. I'm not trying to call anyone out. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is to establish that there is a problem, and that we as a group, we try to overcome the problem and move forward. And the snarky little motherfucker, player number one, and I so badly wanted to call his name out and everything, um, because so that no one accidentally gets him in their game. I mean, such a shitty motherfucker. But I'm not going to. He then proceeds to tell me that I'm trying to change their game. And so I thought to myself, and I said, you know what? He's right. I mean, if, this is their game dynamic, they've been playing here for a year and a half. I'm the new guy, you know, maybe I should just leave the game and go find another game. I mean, that's usually my modus operandi. So I was like, yeah, that might be a good idea. So, I messaged the GM and I'm like, I finished out the game, it was cordial. And I said, I think that, that this isn't going to really work. Your guys, they don't want to do all this. They're driving me crazy. They're going slow as shit. I counted one dude at, I ended up timing him. I timed him at 30 minutes, 26 minutes, and 9 minutes. These were the 3 times that I timed him, 9 minutes and 46 seconds. And then he proceeded to fucking argue with the GM afterwards, and I forgot the time that because I thought he was actually going to let the next person go and do his turn, but instead he decided he was going to fucking argue with the GM. So it was 9 minutes 46 seconds and plus the amount of time he argued, which I didn't time. But so this shit, and I tell him, this is, this is taking forever, this is going on. And so then I open up a can of worms because apparently the GM had felt a certain way about this the entire time. And so he started telling me about how he's pissed off these players and for all these reasons. And he's going into detail about how these things are bothering him. And this is before I really knew intimately what the problems were. And, quite to the level that I did. And the GM went into detail about how he had been having these problems, how he'd been talking to the one player, and the one player pisses him off, and he's talking to the other player about coming to the game and fixing his character, but the player never comes over there to fix his character, and he doesn't know what to do with this goddamn NPC because the player doesn't know how to use the fucking NPC, and and he's got that fucking feed and all this other shit and everything. So, I start giving him practical advice, like kill the goddamn fucking NPC, tell him, hey, you need to come on here and do this and get your character squared away, or I'll fucking kill him and give you your feedback, or take control over the fucking druid. He is a non-player character and fucking make him sit in the back, cast heal spells, and use his companion to fucking protect him. I mean, shit. There was so many answers to these problems, and the real problem is that throughout all of this was the GM refused to do anything about the game. He wanted people to do things because he had said so, and he didn't want to actually maintain control. He didn't want to referee the game like a proper GM. So he ended up, like, it was funny because he ended up tagging me in a post that because I ended up leaving the game. I said some really nasty shit and everything to the fucking players. I fucking chewed the one player out, the fucking 31-minute player. I chewed him a new asshole, told him he was a fucking piece of shit, and I ended up leaving the game. And the other player was cool. I didn't have any problems with him, other than he needed to fix that and everything. But that was really in the GM. The GM just needed to crush that. And I told the GM that I really wanted to leave, and the GM tried to bribe me to stay in. I stayed in one more game session and everything. And then after that, I told him I fucking flipped out on the dude, and then I fucking said that I was going to fucking leave. And so this time, I fucking pulled all the stops and I fucking left. Now, he ended up writing inside of his little rule book. The rule book was like 50 pages long, and he wrote like a fucking lawyer. And he wrote exactly what he wanted, and he was very thorough on what he had to say. The problem was, and I told him this, I said, you're always going to have this problem, because, you have no reward and no punishment system. If what the players are doing they are happy with, they will not change it unless there's an antecedent. So unless you are giving them something that make them want to change, or you're taking away something that would make them want to change, they're not. Because, unless the pain of staying the same is outweighed by the pain of change, they're not going to change. You know, it's fucking common sense. And so he didn't want to do that. And I ended up putting a lot of his fucking info out there. He refused to tell the players how he felt. He would do these vindictive things behind the players' backs. What he would do was he would sit there and fucking say, he would fuck them over, but he wouldn't tell them that he was fucking them over. And he'd be fucking them over for a reason, but he wouldn't tell them why. And he wouldn't tell them that he was doing it. And so the players never knew it. They just thought that, shit just got weak. And so I told him, I said, look, I was like, the one player that had with the 31 minutes and everything, he literally got at least two players to leave the game. And that was like other than myself. He had literally got people to sit there and say openly, I'm sorry, GM, I can't play in this game anymore because of this guy. I won't play here anymore. And those people were considered by the GM, I never played with them, to be good role players. And I told him, I said I was done with the game because of him too, because the guy's a piece of shit. But the GM wouldn't listen to logic. And so like it's funny because every time things would go well for like a day, he'd fucking message me. He'd say, man, everything's been going great for the last fucking day or two. And then he'd play another game and be like, oh, fucking went all back to shit and everything. And I told him, I said, there's a simple answer to this. Why do you message me with this shit? If you want my advice, then take my fucking advice and everything. Don't just tell people that they need to fucking do the right thing. You took my advice as far as what you needed to do to fucking change this and make the fucking times and start timing people to fucking take their turns and all this other shit and everything. And tell people to not fucking argue with you and everything. But you need to enforce it. You have no means. You're not enforcing it by any means. And without that, you're not going to be able to get this to say, because the moment they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. As soon as they have emotional whim not to do it, they're fucking not going to. And it's just a real fucking pain in the ass and everything. The fucking game. But and one of the guys is one of the major fucking participators in the fucking little Pathfinder world. The 31-minute guy. He's like one of the major people that a lot of people know. And most people don't know, because he's a rules lawyer. He's a fucking cock asshole rules lawyer. Most people don't know that he is the worst type of player that you could ever possibly have in your game. I'm not shitting you. I timed this motherfucker at just under. It was like 50 seconds or something like that and everything. Under 31 minutes. That's how long this motherfucker took to take his turn. I don't give a fuck if you're Ari Salvatore sitting in a fucking game. I don't give a if you're fucking Terry Brooks sitting in a game. No one wants to sit in a fucking game and wait for one player to take fucking 30 minutes on a fucking turn. No one does. That's just fucking ridiculous. And when I sat there and called him out on this and everything, the other player's like, well, he's trying to take care of multiple characters. I said, look, man, this is not rocket science. Rocket science. You have a move action, a quick, swift, free, and a fucking standard action. Or a full round action. You don't have a lot of fucking options in a goddamn turn. This motherfucker tried to play tactician. So I got, in a 6-second period, which is the time that it takes to take a fucking a round. He spent 30 minutes to decide what he wanted to do in those 6 seconds. It's a fucking ridiculous. But yeah, man, he sure fucking pissed me off, and I ended up leaving that game. And and the GM has a good game, and unfortunately, I seen like there was like 30 players on the thing that used to play, but they don't. The vast majority of them like don't play anymore. At the most, they have when I left the game was like 4 people, to play the game. One of the players that was playing there ended up leaving the game and jumped in my game. It's just, it is what it is. But that fucking one player, man, yeah, he he ruined, just ruins that game. And he ran off all the other fucking players to ever come into the game. And every time someone did anything other than the way that he wanted to do it, he wanted to let them know that he had been there the longest, and that the way that he basically ran things is his show. And it's funny because the GM would say fucking shit like, he thinks it's his fucking show. He thinks this is the way that he fucking wants to run it, and it's his fucking game, and that's literally what it was. The fucking one player wants his own fucking D&D game and his own GM. He wants everybody to fucking do everything the way that he wants them to do it, and he's the only fucking player there, and that's really what it comes down to. And he's a total fucking piece of shit. But just thought I'd put that out there and everything. I'm sure we've all had our run-ins with fucking assholes and fucking cocksuckers. Guys, tell me what your thoughts are. Start a channel. Tell me about your fucked up stories. I love fucked up D&D stories, fucked up Pathfinder stories, and shit like that. That shit's hilarious. You know what I mean? Because there's always some fucking asshole out there that does something really fucking stupid, and yeah, people should talk about him because he's a fucking asshole and fucking deserves it. All right, guys, peace.